Welcome to the GreenStream, a podcast brought to you by Sustainable Business Network Detroit, a network of partnerships between Southeast Michigan stakeholders, innovators, and changemakers. Each partner is on a mission to advance and amplify sustainable business practices, and we're here to learn from, share, and help activate a sustainable way forward for Greater Detroit. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a review and join the conversation on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And head over to our website, sbn-detroit.org. Now, let's listen in to our conversation with today's sustainability leaders.
Well, hello and welcome to the GreenStream. I'm Terry Barclay, and my day job is President and CEO of Inforum, which is the largest women's business organization in Michigan. But I also chair the Sustainable Business Network of Detroit. And I am just absolutely thrilled. We've been trying to get this scheduled for a long time, Ned, that my guest today is Ned Staebler, who's Vice President of Economic Development at Wayne State University and President and CEO of TechTown. And Ned, I feel like everyone knows who you are and knows your background, but I hope you'll spend just a minute telling us a little bit about your background and your story and how you came to the positions that you're in now.
Well, first of all, Terry, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I know I'm the 25th guest you've had, and I'm a little disappointed I didn't make the top 10 or the top 15, but hey, better late than never. I'll take what I can get. So super excited to be here. I love the podcast. I love your work at Inforum as well. So always great to see you, even virtually. But about me, yeah, I think a lot of people know me. I'm not entirely certain a lot of people know the real story. So, you know, I'm a Detroiter. I was born and raised in the city, went to Detroit public schools through 6th grade, and then U of D through 7th through 12th. So, you know, coming back to TechTown and Wayne State is a lot like coming home. And, you know, I disappeared from Michigan for 15 years, went to undergrad at Harvard, then spent 10 years in Chicago and London working in sort of finance and trading, derivative products. And then at some point said, what am I doing? I was supposed to be back in Detroit, you know, making a difference in my community. And so I left the bank. I went back to grad school and did a master's at the London School of Economics in comparative politics. Learned about this thing called economic development and wrote a dissertation on how states were responding to globalization. And I used Michigan as a model, you know, what we were doing right, what we were doing wrong, and then moved back to Michigan in 2005 and took a job at the state's economic development agency, MEDC, and got to run almost all of what were then the state's economic development programs, you know, especially the ones focused on technology-based economic development. And that was cool until I came down here in 2011. So 13 years later, I've been at Wayne State and took over at TechTown almost 9 years ago now.
Gosh, you know, it's really a remarkable story, and we're so glad you're back in Michigan and utilizing your talents here to help propel all the cool stuff that's going on. I'm so curious about your view about the intersection of economic sustainability. You know, how do you think about that at Wayne State and at TechTown?
Well, you know, we think a lot about economic sustainability and economic mobility. That's a big part of everything that we do. You know, it's in all of our missions and visions and values and all of those things, our strategic plans. You know, ultimately, what I say at TechTown is our mission really. You know, people say, "Oh, you're a business support organization." I say, "Yeah, really, we're about breaking cycles of intergenerational poverty and generating equitable community wealth through entrepreneurship." But ultimately, the problem that we're focused on is sort of that higher level one. You know, Wayne State, very similarly, you know, we are the best university in the state for taking students and lifting up their you know, economic prospects, and one of the best in the country at doing it as well. And I think that's super important to the state of Michigan and its future, is that, you know, we need to make sure that everybody gets to participate in this new economy that we're building. So there's that aspect of it, sort of in sustainability. And then we obviously have some very specific things where we're targeting, mobility and trying to, make the world a greener place and a healthier place. So we have something like the Mobility Acceleration Innovation Network that was funded by the Economic Development Administration, where we're helping to start and grow companies that are, focused on how do we move people and their things and their ideas around better in a more sustainable, and an efficient way. So there's very specific ones, and then of course there's the general ways as
well. So I know that you've got sustainability initiatives that are part of the platform at TechTown. Could you talk a little bit more about those?
So sustainable broadly, or sustainable environmentally, or
really all of the above, because SBN and the GreenStream is about sustainability in all of its forms.
Yeah, I think that's great, because I think people often get focused when they hear sustainable and think, oh, it's got to be green, it's got to be environmental, and I
Right.
Absolutely, but I don't think there is a trade-off. In fact, I think quite the opposite. I think the electric vehicle revolution, if you will, or the non-internal combustion engine revolution, because I don't think it'll only be electric as we move forward here, is super important. But it is not an either or. There are going to be a lot of really great jobs and a lot of great economic growth that's created by, hopefully combating global warming, and that's really sort of the things that we're focused on, because we are trying to find sustainable business models around making the world sustainable. So I mentioned Maine, the Mobility Accelerator Innovation Network is a great, example of that. But in terms of sustainable business, we look at the sort of usual indicators of success, like, are companies generating revenue, right? I mean, obviously we're looking at how much other money they can bring in from other investors. That's an important piece of it. But the best kind of investment is revenue, because it shows you've got traction and it will be sustainable. It's one of those things that when you start looking at how do we do economic development more broadly, there isn't enough money in philanthropy to fix all the problems we've got. We've got to find revenue models. They're going to tap the private sector, even the government sector. There's not enough, really, although there's a lot more than empathy. So really trying to focus on those, whether even with, say, nonprofits. So we run something called COAC, which is our nonprofit support center. And one of their big focuses is, hey, nonprofits, have you looked into all the potential sustainable revenue sources that you can look for to help, add runway to your business?
I'm just really curious. I think one of the questions that people often have when we start talking about sustainable business is kind of the sustainable for whom a question. And really, that's what I so admire about your work and leadership and that of TechTown and Wayne State, is that you are connecting opportunities for bigger, broader opportunities and wealth creating opportunities for people who live right here in our community. Are you seeing that starting to happen with greater frequency? Are you kind of hopeful for that future and building and growing those connections?
Absolutely. I mean, we don't have any other choice, first of all right? We saw what happened when you build an economy that only works for a certain group of people and others are excluded. It's not you keep using the word, it's not sustainable, right? It's something's got to give when you're in those have that type of economic segregation and segmentation. So we are adamant that everyone has to participate in the new economy that we're building, and that means you can't say, okay, hey, rich white people, you're going to go to college and you're going to get a great degree and you're going to go and make $150,000 a year, and you other folks, go do something vocational. You're going to make $50,000 a year or $40,000 a year, right? That's an older way of thinking. And I will tell you, there are still some folks that when I say everybody should be, trying to get their kids to go to college, et cetera, they say, well, not everyone needs to. Mm-hmm. I always say this, the people who say not everyone needs to go to college, where are their kids going? 98% of their kids are going to college, right? So it's a little case of don't do what I say, look at what I do. And it's why, you look at TechTown, for example. I already talked about Wayne State as an economic driver of growth. But you look at TechTown, we worked with 1,000 entrepreneurs last year, just over 1,000. I think it was 1,004 or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. We've had this really big growth curve. I mean, we were doing 200 or 300 6 or 7 years ago, and just really expanded our operations. But of those 1,000, 85% were entrepreneurs of color, 68% were Black entrepreneurs, 66% were female entrepreneurs, or you, she, her pronouns, right? 11% were immigrants. So we are really intentional about that. Now, we're not where I want to be. Detroit is 78% Black. I'm at 68%. So I've got work to do there, right? Detroit is 92% people of color. We're at 85, 86%. I've got more room to go. But we're not gonna stop until we really are representative of the community that we're serving, because we want to make sure everybody gets to participate as we have this revitalization.
Mm-hmm. That's so, wow, those are impressive stats. Congratulations on all of that, and congratulations on saying you still have more to do. I mean, that kind of drive and that kind of vision is what it's all about, and is what's going to get us there. Could you maybe talk a little bit more about how you see education connecting to sustainability measures for small businesses in Detroit?
Yeah, this is a really hard one.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk a little more broadly about education than just small businesses, because I think it's so important. And I think there's so much misinformation out there. So I was just saying how everyone should be striving for college. And I get it's not a viable option for everyone. And and obviously it doesn't need to be. There are plenty of amazing people who've led completely successful, happy, prosperous lives that don't have a college education or college degree. But generally speaking, and as a pretend economist, from an economics point of view, the biggest predictor of success in your economy is the education level of your of the labor force, of the residents, right? More than 60% of the variance in income is based on the education level. So we need more folks with higher levels of education. And what stops them? The number one reason is cost, or the perception of cost. And that's what I want to talk about, because the sticker price that people see about colleges, oh my Lord, that college costs $50,000 a year, whatever it is, 20, 30, 50, depending what you're talking about. Almost no one pays that price. So at Wayne State, for example, 55% of our incoming students this year paid nothing, zero, out of pocket, 55%, okay? 45%.
Wow, I had no idea about that, Ned. Is that typical, or is that?
No, it is. I mean, it's certainly higher than most places, but it's based on a number of factors. One of which, the median household income of the students who are entering Wayne State is significantly lower. Last I looked, the median income was in the 60,000-ish range, if I recall, 60 to 70,000. I think that's about right. Whereas at U of M, it's 150,000, and their mean is 300,000, right? Yeah. So I'm sure a lot more of them are paying out of pocket because, well, frankly, they can. But the next piece everyone gets all worked up about is, well, debt. Everyone's taking out all this debt. You're gonna have to take $100,000 of debt out, et cetera. Couple of things. First of all, you're not. Okay. The amount of debt that the average person who takes debt takes on coming out of Wayne State is under $30,000, more like 25 last time. Okay. And that's of the people who take debt, more than half of whom don't take any debt, right? So, the amount of debt that people are really taking is actually for an undergraduate degree, is actually very small relative to what the common perception is. Yes, you're going to go to medical school, you're going to leave with 6 figures of debt, et cetera. You're also going to leave with a salary that is going to turn into high 6, 7 figures. And so that's the other side of the equation. You say, well, it's not worth it. to get even $20,000 of debt. It's not worth it. Except 5 years out of college, the average person with a bachelor's degree is making $20,000 a year more than their counterparts without a bachelor's degree. Fast forward 15, 20, 25 years down the road, now they're making $55,000 more than their counterparts without the college degree. That $20,000 or $30,000 of debt you take on is an incredible investment on a lifetime of prosperity. They also live longer, literally almost 9.5 years longer. They're going to be healthier. They're going to be happier. They're going to have less obesity, less pick a disease. They've got less of it. There's so many reasons why folks need to be going to college.
Interesting. So can we go back to the other argument that you can make a perfectly good living without a college education? I know that that's been, as we saw shortages in applicants for those kinds of positions in our state, I know that the business community started raising, almost a campaign about let's elevate and celebrate those jobs as well. What would you advise someone who's trying to look at those trade-offs?
So again, absolutely. One can have a great career without going to college, et cetera. Now, I will tell you that when people hold up what I call anecdata, which is, here's a story of someone, I know an electrician who makes $100,000 a year. Absolutely, you do. I'm sure you know an electrician who makes $100,000 a year. First off, though, I betcha they own their own business. They have an electrical company or something, and they're really an entrepreneur. But fine, fair enough. But I can always throw back, I know the CEO of a company that went to college who makes $5 million a year, right? Okay, now we're talking anecdotes, right? Like, this is not data. So there's that piece of it. The second piece is the types of work that you have to do. And what often happens is in the job security. So when you look at anytime you have a recession, who are the first people to get laid off? Is it the CEO? Is it the white collar worker, the manager, the director? Nope. It's the lower cost, lower educated, lower value add employees, right, that end up getting dropped off. So even their unemployment rate, which is usually 3% higher or so, it's 3% or lower for folks with a college degree. It's 6 or 7 for folks without. Look at 2009. Look at 2020. Those numbers jumped, whereas the white collar employees, the managerial, they didn't. They ticked up a little bit. So you're going to have less security as well. And a lot of it in Michigan specifically, we think about but the auto industry. I can go and get a production job, and that production job is going to allow me to enter the middle class, buy a house up north, and buy a boat. I mean, that's what our parents, our grandparents, talked about doing. The reality is those jobs that pay like that don't exist really anymore.
Right.
Not at scale. The median wage for a production worker in the state of Michigan is $20.43, $41,000 a year. Now they get some profit sharing if you're in UAW, and it could be a little higher with some overtime and all that. But your average worker, is making $45,000 a year. That's not a middle class wage these days. The median household income in Michigan is $65,000 a year, right? So these are not the kinds of jobs we're thinking about. That go back 30 years ago. 30 years ago, those jobs were paying $38,000 a year, which it's the equivalent of 70 or 80,000 now.
Right. It's so great that you're bringing that kind of thinking to your role so that you can have a real impact. And you have all these different roles, Ned, in your current job. So I'm really kind of curious about that. You've got your role at Wayne State University, the role at TechTown. What are some of the ways you see synergy between those roles in the future? What will that do?
It's a great question. It's the number one question I get from people who are like, I don't understand. Wayne State, TechTown, how much time do you spend at both of those jobs? And my answer usually is, well, about 3/4 of my time at Wayne State and about 3/4 of my time at TechTown. Yeah. And I'm only half joking, because the reality is in so many situations, I'm doing both. All right, I'm wearing both hats and looking for opportunities for both organizations. But what most people don't know is that TechTown really is a part of Wayne State. So TechTown's legal name is the Wayne State University Research and Technology Park in the city of Detroit. We are a separate entity with separate, bylaws and governance, et cetera. But we really are a part of the university and the university community. Now, historically, they've been sort of separated, and some of that was intentional and some of it was natural. As you are separate, these things are going to happen. But in the last few years, we've really made an effort to say, you know what, TechTown is Wayne State. And you're going to see more of that because, to your point, there are amazing synergies between a world-class R1 research institution in the city of Detroit and a best-in-class business support organization in the city of Detroit. We have very similar missions, and the ability for us to leverage the right platform at the right time. So, hey, we need an institutional balance sheet and the presence of an organization like Wayne State that's been here for 100 and almost 60 years in the city of Detroit. Great, we can do that. Oh, we need a nimble nonprofit that can apply for this brand and partner with folks and sign MOUs and do those kinds of things quickly. Yeah, we've got one of those too. So we're really trying to take advantage of sort of the best of both worlds.
Pardon me, I've got a little bit of a cough that I'm dealing with
No worries.
today. So the Office of Economic Development manages a university-wide economic impact strategy. Are there some highlights you can share with us about that strategy?
Absolutely. What the economic impact strategy is a way to look across the university and say, an organization like ours that is one of the biggest employers in the city, which is churning out an educated workforce, not only undergrads, but also, a third of the doctors and lawyers and, that live here in Michigan. 82%, I believe, of our graduates stay in the state of Michigan afterwards. So we really are an entity that is about, Detroit and Southeast Michigan more broadly. So we went around and said to stakeholders, what should we be doing? What are the things you'd like to see us doing more of? Is it connecting to industry? Is it, making sure there's pathways for high school or community college students? Hey, how about paying our employees a household supporting wage? How about our research on local issues, et cetera? So it was about what do we need to be doing, and then inventorying, okay, what are we doing? And then identifying gaps. So we want to be able to tell our story about the fact that we do have these students that are moving at this trajectory. Their expected outcomes improved by 15% after coming through Wayne State, the most in the state. Are we providing healthcare through our mobile health units around the city? Or should we? And what are we not doing? And so using this as a platform to go and create some of those other things that we need to be doing to better live up to our economic impact. I mentioned household supporting jobs. 3 of the 5 university economic impact strategy goals reference household supporting jobs. And this was intentional because it's really hard for a person to be focused on innovation and sustainability if they're also worried about paying their bills or their rent, or if they don't have some level of economic sustainability personally. So that's one of our broader goals. 3 of our broader goals reference how do we make sure that folks, whether it's our students or our employees, are getting household supporting jobs. Not just jobs, good jobs.
It is so wonderful to hear you talk about strategy. And as I listen to you, all I can think of is sort of an example after example after example where you're walking the talk. I can think of specific projects where I feel like Wayne State and TechTown's goal is to say yes instead of to say no. How can we support some, projects or initiatives that are important and make sense in our community? So really, thank you for being such a great community partner in all of this thinking and work and putting the community and its people front and center in what you do.
Thank you. The people are the whole reason why all of us Inforum or Wayne State or TechTown, why any of us exist is to invest in the people that are here, right? Unfortunately, we're not here making big bucks, right? We're here, investing in our communities.
So let's go back to sort of sustainability for just a minute. And could you talk a little bit about what role sustainability plays in economy of scale for small businesses, that TechTown supports in Detroit?
Well, I think one of the important things, one of the benefits we have here is, people talk about Detroit hustles harder.
Yep.
What's the old Frank Sinatra song? If you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. Is that it? I say
Yep.
rubbish. All right, New York's easy. My 16-year-old can make it in New York. If you can make it in Detroit, you can make it anywhere. And I think the folks that are here have a resiliency of spirit and a camaraderie around it. I mean, there really is a Detroit versus everybody. Tommy Walker is one of our partners. Love him to death. Detroit versus everybody kind of spirit to it. So all the entrepreneurs, or most of the entrepreneurs here, are definitely working to support each other and are holding out hands to others. I literally just walked through our lobby where Mamba Hamisi from Baobab Fair was meeting with two up-and-coming entrepreneurs looking to learn from him, which is still awesome to me, because I think back to when he won our hatch competition a few years ago, and he was the up-and-coming entrepreneur that we're like, man, I don't know how we're going to get him open, but we need to get him open because I need to eat that amazing food. And now I can go to his restaurant twice a week. And this explains a lot of the problems I'm having around my diet, but there it is. Go to Baobab Fair. It is amazing.
We won't tell your family. We won't tell them.
Don't. I tell my wife I brown bag it every day.
Yeah.
But I think she knows the truth. So, watching folks like that, it's Ken Walker from the Kenneth Walker Collective, who's now partnering with the MEDC to host 4 or 5 other, fashion and soft good brands to sell in what he calls the Kenneth Walker Collective store in Midtown. I mean, he was 4 years ago going through our retail boot camp program to get open in his site, and now just a few years later, he's paying it forward to helping other entrepreneurs learn about sales and marketing, product placement and merchandising, and all the things that you need to do if you're going to be successful in a complicated industry like fashion that I would never be in, right? So there's that aspect as well, is how do we build the flywheel of success so that we're all giving back and growing within our community, because it's hard out there, and everybody needs a hand up. And the beauty of Detroit is that it's not a zero-sum game. You open up one more store and you think, oh, if another store opens, that's competition. But that's not real. The reality is there's so much demand that 2 stores is actually better for both of them. And 3 stores is even better. 3 means, 2 plus 2 plus 2 equals 9. So I'm not the math guy, but like that's how it works. So for example, in the Woodward and Grand Boulevard area, which is where Baobab Fair opened up, there was a restaurant or 2 that were opening up there. And so Baobab coming in wasn't competition. Now there's Baobab and Supino and Yum Village and Cooking by Q and Joe Louis Southern Kitchen, and Little Liberia is going to move in there. And next thing you know, you've got a destination.
Right.
So they're not cannibalizing each other.
Right.
They're all lifting each other up, because you go there, you have dinner at one of them, you say, ooh, next week I'm going to try the pizza place, or the Liberian place, or the vegetarian place, the vegan place, right? So yeah. That's kind of the spirit we're going for.
Yeah, absolutely. So are there, one of the things I'm really curious about is, as I talk to businesses, oftentimes when you bring up the topic of sustainability, they see dollar signs.
Yeah.
They don't see cost savings. And I'm wondering if there are any tools or specific kinds of support that you can provide, or that you're providing small businesses to help them think about sustainability and measure their success.
I think you've hit on a real problem that some of our under-resourced entrepreneurs face, right? Amongst all the other challenges, now you're saying, go and compete with somebody who's better capitalized than you, who can put $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 in up front,
right,
that will save them $1,000 a month. And you're like, man, $1,000 a month sounds good, but I got to put 20 grand in now. I don't get the payback on that for, well, do the math, 20 months. I don't know if I'm going to do that, right? Which is a problem. So I hate to say it, but that's the way we're helping them solve that, is through things like the TechTown Startup Fund. Hey, let's identify where a $5,000, $10,000, up to $20,000 investment will end up saving you money in the long run. Whether it's through technology, point of sale machine that's going to help streamline your inventory so you're not wasting food or whatnot, whatever it is, we're going to look for those opportunities to provide that capital, because that's just one of those things. Terry, when you and I go to start a business, my wife and I started a business 13 years ago. And if you ask me how much money, did it cost you to start the business, I can't tell you, because it was a not insignificant amount, but we pulled it out of our bank account and just plugged it in. I mean, don't get me wrong. The accountants will tell you, they can tell you exactly. If I went back to QuickBooks, I could tell you exactly, but I don't remember because I didn't have to go borrow it. I didn't have to, et cetera. Why? Because the average net worth of a white family in America is $187,000. The average net worth of a black family in America is $20,000. So if I needed 10 or 15 grand out of my pocket to start the business, I just did it, and allowed me to do it effectively, efficiently, sustainably from day one, as opposed to a lot of our other entrepreneurs that are bootstrapping it, so to speak. I feel so bad for folks that are bootstrapping because they don't have an uncle to ask for 10 grand or an aunt or whatnot, or they can't use their credit card because they're not banked, et cetera. So we literally provide, those chunks of cash. And through programs like the MEDC Small Business Support Hubs program, we're going to be able to provide technical assistance dollars to more, to another 50 to 100 entrepreneurs over the next couple of years to get them that $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 they need to become more sustainable upfront.
So we could keep talking forever.
I would love to. That's what we do.
But before we start winding down, Ned, you just have been in touch with so many inspirational stories, so many founders, so many economic success stories. Are there a few more inspirational stories that you could share with us that are about, sustainable forward business models? And
oh, you're killing me. There's so many. It's horrible. I get asked that a lot, like, oh, who's your favorite company? I'm like, oh, which one's your favorite kid? And we all have them, right? But we don't actually say that out loud, right? I mean, we just, don't tell my kids.
Well, I'm not asking you to pick one. You could pick several.
I mean, the folks, Mama and Nadia at Baobab Fair, are a great story. I mean, they literally are Burundian refugees who left because of the political unrest there, and were living in Freedom House shelter when they started to cater and pop up and do things like that. So, now having restaurants that are in our wholesaling coffee and chocolate from sustainable farms, is next level. It's tough to beat that one, right? Which is why your listeners have probably already read about their story in one of the 17 other publications. That's every time I'm in that restaurant, they're filming a PBS documentary about. But there are so many more, off the top of my head. Our last year's Hatch winner, Catherine Coleman from Bouncing Around the Motor City, she's rehabbing an old building that, wow, the before and after pictures are going to be stunning, because it is, when you hear the term ruin porn in Detroit, you have this picture of the train station, which is coming along, or an abandoned warehouse that was boarded up and all that. She and her husband are taking a building like that and are turning it into a balloon and party store. And I don't mean party in terms of like buy liquor. I mean in terms of like buying the supplies for your next birthday party, and things like that. And it's starting to look so nice. And it's in an area that is not a well-traveled neighborhood. But as far as I know, it's going to be Detroit's only balloon and party store. And she's gotten tons of orders. And this building, this block is going to be revitalized because her husband's a general contractor on it. So she doesn't have a problem with the contractor not delivering, because she just, it's her husband, right? So he better deliver. Catherine is a great story. And she's another one. She doesn't come from means. When she's been going to balloon conventions around the world for years, and literally she drives and she takes her kids and they sleep in her car, or they did, because that's what she could afford. Hopefully we're going to prevent her from having to sleep in her car. She can get a hotel. I mean, not the Ritz, but we'll try Holiday Inn Express or something. That'll make her a doctor. But those kinds of stories. She's a great example. Man, there are so many of them. I hate to start talking about them because then I'll forget, and someone will see this and say, "Why didn't you mention me?" But there really are just a plethora of great stories across the city.
Well, Ned, really, truly, thank you so much for the work that you're doing and your leadership. We really can't thank you enough. We're so glad that you came back to Michigan and that you're here. Are there any, sort of last things you want to leave us with that you want to be sure to share?
The last thing I'll say is that, in addition to our focus on problems, as opposed to sort of the solutions to them, we're also really focused on how do we create a culture where everybody who works here is going to feel like they're a part of that vision. They have buy-in, right? And so, we've been really fortunate over the last few years to get recognized as a best managed nonprofit and a Crane's Cool Place to Work. Our HR director was a HR Executive of the Year last year by the American Association of Employers, whatever the HR organization is. I think that if you're somebody listening or watching this that is running a small business or a nonprofit, you can't neglect that piece. You need to be intentional about your corporate culture. And if you think you have a good culture, but you're not intentionally doing things to improve it, you don't have a good culture. You just don't, no one's telling you that you don't, right? So we're really intentional about that work. We do cultural audits every 2 years, and then we do a whole host of intermediary stuff to resolve the problems that are identified and improve on the solutions. And I think doing that is the number one way to make your team more effective, and has really helped us be successful.
Such great advice, truly. Ned, thank you so much for your time today. And I look forward to talking again when you've got the next big set of successes to talk about.
Terry, thanks for having me. I look forward to seeing you in person sometime soon. Get well soon.
Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in to the Sustainable Business Network Detroit, the GreenStream podcast. Remember to like, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Make sure to follow us on SBN-Detroit.org and stay tuned for more conversations on sustainability from inside and around the city.